So hi everybody. Thank you for being in this session. So I'll be talking about contributing beyond code in GNOME. So my name is Ruth Ikegah, and I'm a backend developer from Nigeria. I'm also a technical writer, and I'm also part of the GitHub Star program. And about not putting my video because of connection issues, my bandwidth. I have to not put on my video for now. Maybe during the questions, I'll try to put on my video. So, yeah. Okay, so in today's talk, I'm going to be taking you through my open source career ladder path and the challenges I encountered during contributing to open source, and what sparked my interest in while contributing, and also how you can help other newcomers and open source contributors and non-code contributors, because today, like, I'm going to be focusing on non-code contributions, right? So sit right and let's enjoy the session. So let me tell you about my story into open source. So first, you should know that it's less than a year that I started doing open source contributions. I started doing open source contributions 3 months into my coding journey at July. So I'm going to be taking you through the story of all my open source contributions with the GNOME Foundation, and I hope you enjoy my story. So yeah, I started my open source contributions with the Women of Open Source Africa Challenge. So a quick context on what Women of Open Source Africa is. So Women of Open Source Africa is an initiative by the open source community here in Africa, and another group called another NGO called She Code Africa, that is about contributing to the success of African women in tech. So the initiative came about in July, just launched in July, to make more women in Africa contribute to open source. Right, so there was the launch of the program, of the initiative, and there was like a little workshop to get you to contribute, give your first open source contribution. And I was 3 months into coding then. I have a microbiology degree. I transitioned from microbiology to doing tech. So I was 3 months into coding, and I said, okay, open source seems like a good thing for me to start on with. And before now, I'm also like a social volunteer. So volunteering has been something I am really passionate about. So I said, okay, I'm going to attend this. Attend this launch for WOSCAR, that's Women of Open Source Africa. So I attended the launch. I think I attended it late, and during the workshop, I said, okay, let me give it a try. And we used the first contributions repository, one of the popular first repositories people do their first open source contributions with. So we used the first contributions repository to do a practice for the workshop. And I was struggling because I was trying to I had never used Git before. That was like my first Git experience. I'm going to tell you about my challenges with Git later on during the session. So I have never used Git before, and we were supposed to use Git. I had to download Git on my system and try to follow up with the conference. I was even jotting down while the speaker was trying to help us set up Git and everything. And I didn't even know how I made this contribution. You can see this is a screenshot of a tweet I made after making my pull request was merged after making the pull request to add my name to the first contributions. So I immediately tweeted about this after I was able to send in a pull request for the first time, and it got so many engagements. Like you can see here, I had over 200 likes on this step of people telling me congratulations for making your first open source contribution. And I was so happy because I just basically added my name to the contributors list, and people were saying congratulations, and it was so nice. And I said, okay, I think I would want to keep doing this. And fortunately, Women of Open Source Africa had a challenge in the month of July that was starting in the month of July. So it's similar to the October 1st challenge, where you get the criteria was get a good amount of pull requests merged, contribute to different organizations, and you're going to get a prize. So in the month of July, I put my head down to start looking for open source organizations that I could start contributing to. And it was really very hard for me at first because I just used Git for the first time, and I'm somebody that is very, very inquisitive. So I was like, okay, how am I going to start finding projects that I would contribute to? So let's go to how I found GNOME projects. So I want to take you through my engagement with GNOME. But first, I'll pause here and say thank you so much to Sri. Sri has been amazing. Like, Sri is the GNOME uncle. So he has been a very good mentor all through my contributions, both with GNOME and both with other organizations that I have been able to make impactful contributions to. So this is a shout out to Sri, and also a shout out to Peace Ojeme and also Samson Godi. They were very, very helpful with me finding the GNOME project, and I started my first contributions with the GNOME project. So I was just 3 months into coding. I was taking up Python classes, self-learning by myself. I was looking for projects I could get involved with. And then at that time, the Scalable Onboarding project led by Sri was ongoing, and I joined the Jitsi room first. Like, that was my first time to hear about Jitsi. I only knew about Google Meet and Zoom. But when I joined the Jitsi room on the first day of the meeting, I just stayed quiet to listen to everything. I felt lost, but then I had some courage because they were willing to hear my opinions. I was coming into the call for the first time, and they asked for my opinions, and they wanted to know what I thought about the project, or there were questions, and I tried also to give my opinions, right? And then I was told we're going to be using GitLab, and I was only conversant with GitHub because, remember, I was 3 months into my coding journey. So I said, okay, I think I would have to I saw a change a change was needed on the README. So I was like, okay, I can make this change. And remember, I was on the Oscar challenge, right? I had to get some pull requests by the end of July. So I needed to start making my contributions. And I saw that the Scalable Onboarding project on GitLab, it had a README fix to be fixed. And I said, okay, let me try to contribute to this project by changing the typos on the README. And making my first contribution was an interesting and a frustrating one, because I struggled with Git and SSH. Like, I remember there was a particular night I did not sleep, because I am somebody that is very eager. Like, I want to, if I start on something, I'm so eager to want to finish it. So I had to stay up all night trying to send in my change. I was struggling with setting up SSH and all the other things, but with the help of a friend, Okoye, I was able to push my change, and it got the first one. It was having so many errors. Then I tried again the second day, and it went through. So basically, after making those README changes, I got involved with the calls and trying to set up this project. So the Scalable Onboarding project is basically, how do we make onboarding scalable? How do we improve the onboarding system in GNOME? So we're trying to set up all those. So I was fully involved with this project. Another project that I engaged with was the Faces of GNOME. So the Faces of GNOME was a website to appreciate the GNOME contributors, the GNOME Foundation members, and I tried to do some overhaul on the documentation and seeing things I could improve. Then also another project that I'm also proud to be part of is the Extensions Rebooted Initiative. So we are trying to make the extensions, GNOME extensions, trying to create that conversation between the GNOME developers and the extension developers, so that at every release, their extensions, GNOME extension, would not break. So all these projects that are listed here, even though I was not able to, I was still finding my way around coding, I was still able to meaningfully contribute to these projects. I was able to write on the Extensions Rebooted Initiative. I was able to, write a blog post with together with Sri, and I was able to look at the documentation and try to see what I can do to make it better. So it goes beyond saying that open source is more than code, right? So let me talk about my challenges during contributing, because for non-code contributors, there are so many challenges. So there are so many challenges that I encountered, even though it was a very good journey for me, even though it was really very sweet and very interesting. Let me tell you about the challenges I encountered contributing. So let's talk about my technical difficulties. So I told you earlier that I had some very, very, very crazy issues with Git. So I was using Git for the first time, and I think over time, over the period of 1 year, I would say everybody has Git problems, because till today I still have my issues with Git. But then starting was a whole lot more difficult, because I was just getting started, and Git was a whole lot for me. But then, with trying to be consistent and with help I got from the community, I got better with using Git. Now, another technical difficulty I faced was installing and setting up GNOME. I use a Windows operating system. So, finding how to set up and install was a big problem for me. It was so difficult for me. I know there were times where I had to read a lot of docs, I had to do a lot of things. And then network bandwidth. Here in my country, most times, the network is quite very poor. So joining the meetings, I had to, sometimes I would try to speak and nobody would be able to hear me because my network was quite poor. And that's like an issue that most people, that is not like when you're not able to get good and better internet, you get to face this network bandwidth issues, right? And also I had electricity issues. There were some times where I needed to work with my laptop, but I did not have power to power my laptop, so sometimes it delayed my contributions and also my communications, and also sometimes it could delay my enthusiasm to continue. But then happily I still pushed forward. So communication difficulties. Now, I am from Africa and I'm from Nigeria. So I had the accent. Trying to hear when someone else is speaking was quite hard for me. Even when I tried to speak, also sometimes I would have to repeat myself over and over again for the other person to hear me. And it's not much, it's normal because accent differs. So I had to battle with a whole lot of this, but I had to try talking because I am somebody that talks really fast. So I had to try pacing my words. I had to talk slowly so the other person will be able to clearly hear me. So there were also difficulties with me understanding technical and social terms that were unique to the GNOME project. So if during on the Rocket chat or on the chat channel, someone is talking about something that I was not conversant with, it was like it was hard for me to understand these terms because I was just starting. So I also had slack in communication, like with time zones, right? So initially when I started, I did not understand the time zone difference. So when I would send a message and there was no response in like 5 hours, I was like, oh, did this person not get my message? But then later on, I got to understand that that time zones differ, and it can be nighttime at the other end of the world, right? So now I have talked about my difficulties. I want to tell you about what I loved contributing, not just contributing code, but contributing beyond code. The community. There is so much to be done in the community. I saw beyond the software, right? I saw beyond because I saw people trying to understand the software. I saw beyond code and was able to contribute to the community, help in the community management, help with even not just with NOM, but with other organizations that I actively contribute to. I was part of the community management. I always try to look for ways I could help somebody else at the other end. I always try to look for ways I could, improve or promote people that were contributing. So I really love the community work and I will always be a community fan. Also, I try to create a niche for myself while contributing to open source. So I found out because of the difficulties I had contributing, I started advocating for beginners because I found out that in most open source projects, beginners are not well appreciated. And they're like, I saw that and I said, okay, well, I'll try my best in whatever community I find myself in. Try to advocate for beginners. Try to tell them you can get into open source because most people think it's just code, it's just about the software. But so many people do not know you can actually do other things. You can engage in community, you can engage in documentation. I also try to do public speaking to help others understand that yes, you can contribute to open source without having to write code, and also quality impact that he brought on the software. So a bit about this: I am part of the chaos badging project. And we are trying, what that badging project is about. It's giving diversity and inclusive badges to conferences that observe these metrics. So over time, contributing to that project, I was able to see how people would change their metrics to suit diverse cultures, right? So there's a lot of quality impact I was able to make, and I see them, and that makes me love open source contributions. Yes, there were rewards and recognitions. So with contributing to open source, right, I got a lot of recognitions, both from persons and both from organizations, right? Because these organizations I have been part of were really helpful to my growth. There were rewards for me. There were recognitions, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So one of the biggest rewards was becoming a GitHub Star. So rewind back to when I said I'm barely 1 year. So June is going to make it 1 year of contributing to open source. And for my contributions and the impact I have made, the people I have inspired and have been able to educate, I became a year. And it was so amazing because I was like the first female from Africa, right? I was um, in the midst of three amazing male guys. So they were people that I have always looked up to, and getting that recognition meant a whole lot to me, and it's spurred me to keep contributing and to keep inspiring and educating others. And also recently I got some swags from Google Open Source. They recognized my contributions with no chaos, and they sent me some swags, which was pretty interesting because while I was unboxing those swags, I unboxed it with my parents, and they were so happy that I have been inspiring, I have been doing amazing things by myself, right? And also, I got an award as a GitHub Star. So when the award came, it was so beautiful. It's so beautiful, rather, and it made me love more things about contributing to open source. Now, how can you help? How can you create a more inclusive space for non-code contributors? How can you encourage more beginners to get involved in open source? Recognize and appreciate non-code contributions in your project or your community. So this is a call to action for you listening, for everybody listening to this talk. Recognize non-code contributions in your community, in your projects. Set channels and pipelines to encourage non-code contributions. Appreciate them, and try to encourage their work. Try to put the spotlight on them. Open source is not just about code, right? Try to show empathy in your communications, in your engagement with non-code contributors, even generally while you're communicating, because it's a diverse team, and you do not understand. You might not know what the other person at the end of the at the other end is feeling at that moment. So please try to show empathy while you're communicating. And also, the most important thing I want you to take away from this session is recognize and appreciate non-code contributions. Set channels and pipelines to encourage those non-code contributions, and also to look at beginners coming into your project because they are helpful. Beginners see things from a different end, right? So try to encourage beginners that come into your project. Try to make things easier for them. Try to tell them, okay, if this is not your stack, if you can't write Python, you could contribute to documentation. You could help with community engagement. So try, this is a call out action to everybody that is listening presently to this talk and persons that are going to listen to this talk in future. So I'll take questions if there are any questions at this point.
Thank you very much for your talk. Very, very interesting. There's actually only one question in the short note. I'm not sure if someone else is writing right now. I know that there is someone texting in the chat. So I'm not sure if you can access the shared note, if you want me to read the question for you, or if you prefer to read it yourself.
Yeah. I'm trying to access it. It's still loading on my end, so you can try to read it to me.
So the first question is whether you have considered using a graphical interface to access Git.
Okay. So yes, I actually tried using the GitHub desktop, but there are some limitations to using on one of the projects I started contributing with. So you would always need to sign off your commits when you create a commit, and that was not available with GitHub desktop. So on that particular project, there was no way I could use GitHub desktop. So I had to stick with using Git. I think but definitely I still encourage beginners to also try out using the GitHub desktop too. So yeah, it works. Okay, is there any other question?
Yes.
So there's to answer that.
Second question, which is, what are good channels to reach non-tech people? I suppose things like ERC and Gitter are still very tech-focused, and so are issue lists on GitHub.
Okay, so channels to reach non-tech. So, Twitter, the tech community, first I'll talk about Twitter. The tech community on Twitter is one very active one. So, you could reach out non-tech people from, making call outs. If your project has a Twitter channel, you can do a call out and specifically state that you encourage non-code contributions, and encourage them to either send a DM or make it in the comments, and definitely you would get responses. And also maybe whenever you introduce your project in conferences or wherever you talk about your project, also put it there that there are different ways to contribute to your project. Non-code contributions are always welcome. So I trust that putting it out there, attracts whosoever wants to contribute without using code to contribute to the project.
There is also a third question, which is if you have a blog where people can read about your open source journey.
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. So the question is asking whether you have a blog where people can read about your open source journey.
Yes, sure. I do have a blog and I'll paste it. Yes, I started, blogging was something that, helped me to learn more because, contributing was, I had to, document my open source contribution. So I'm going to paste the link to my blog in the chat for anyone that wants to access. I particularly have a series to, that I dedicated to talking about my open source journey. So I'm going to paste that in the chat in a second.
I think we can wait a few more seconds
Any
and
more questions?
see if someone else has more questions.
Okay. Okay.
So guys, if you have any question, please write it down in the share notes. Okay, there's a question coming in.
Okay.
So the question is, what are good arguments to convince people to contribute?
So first, I think I said something in the chat. So is amazing. A good attempt to contributing is document. First, can you look at my am I, is it better now? Okay, back now. Sorry about that. So, encourage to contribute, seeing documentation, because that's one of the first questions that, and now to get the project right. So, by good issues, right, or projects, right, that quick fix issues. Those issues, try to make out and put enough right, enough context to what's implementable on the issue. So that problem, what to contribute, even the issue was open, right? Put it in context, say, okay, you can do this, you can reach out to me, you can, this is where you find this file, or to the necessary contributing files. So using you can also look at community management. Managing people that is really very, very hard, right? Contributing to also has helped me develop those skills. So you can also try to talk about community management, how to manage chat channels to avoid misunderstandings and thereabouts. I hope I'm able to answer your question.